In the last lesson, we took a look at using the browser's new email type. This time, we'll take a look at URL, and this allows us to specify that what the user types into that input must be a URL. And again, for mobile phones, they will display the necessary keys for entering a URL, so it also adds that additional bit of accessibility and help. So now, before I begin, I want you to know URL, it's shady, guys, so let's take a look at some of the issues we have to deal with right now. I'm in Opera right now, 11.5, and what you'll see is I'm going to type anything, and we all know that's not a URL. However, if I submit it, it's going to submit successfully. Try it. Oh, that's submitted. Weird. And why is that? And it's because Opera will automatically prepend http:// if one is absent. And we can see that simply by tabbing off. Opera will go ahead and add that on there for you. And really, that's the extent of quote-unquote validation that Opera is performing. And it's really none. It's just checking to make sure that http:// comes at the beginning of it. And if it's not, it will add that on there for you. So in Opera, you're not really getting validation. If we switch over to Chrome, let's see what happens this time if I enter some gibberish. Click Submit. Oh, okay. Well, there is some validation being applied there. But let's test this out. We never want to trust the browser to do real validation, so let's see what happens if I enter a colon. Click Submit. Okay, that's working. But now I'm going to add a letter before it, a colon. Now I'm going to hit Submit. Whoop, it's submitted. So again, what we see here is that the browser is simply looking for a sequence of letters, then a colon, and then another sequence of letters. So just as A at A would pass email validation, A: A will pass URL validation, as you can see right there. So once again, I must be honest, I'm not sure why they are so liberal with what they accept, and I can only assume it's because there is such an enormous array of URLs and emails that they end up making it very, very simplistic in their validation. Nonetheless, it's really nice to know that we can have a little bit of built-in validation for things like this. It can save ourselves some time, and we can do less work on the server side ultimately. Next, let's take a look at the telephone input type, TEL for telephone. Now, this one's a little bit different in that there's so many different phone numbers in the world, they can't really validate it, can they? So if I reload, I type some gibberish, that's going to accept it. At the time of this recording, there's no built-in restrictions. However, let's say I am based in the US in Tennessee, and let's say I want to make sure that the user enters a US-based phone number. In that case, rather than relying on what's built in, I can use a new HTML5 attribute called pattern. And now I can enter a regular expression here if I'm familiar with it. So if you don't know regular expressions, just watch me go through this and I'll explain it along the way. And then when you're done, I really highly, highly recommend that you pick up a regular expressions book because it'll do wonders for your coding. It's an excellent, excellent skill to have. So here, \D refers to any digit. And I want to specify, though, that a US phone number will take the shape of 3 digits, followed by 3 digits, followed by 4 digits. Now, there can be inversions of this. They could add a prefix, so it could be 1-3 digits, 3 digits, 4 digits, or the user might potentially wrap it within parentheses. And then finally, the user could not enter a dash at all, so they do 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. So as you can see, it's actually a little bit difficult to validate a phone number because there's so many different ways the user can enter it. So you have a couple options. One, you can create a regular expression that handles all of these. It's not too tough. Or 2, you could provide the user some input on the format that the phone number they enter should take shape. For now, let's take care of this one, and then we'll come back and upgrade it. So here I'm saying look for 3 digits, and then look for a dash, then look for 3 more digits, then a dash, and now we're to this point, and we're going to look for 4 digits. So now I will save that, and when I come back and reload the page, I'm going to enter anything, and you'll see we get some new validation errors. And by the way, there's this huge spacing because I'm zoomed in all the way. If I try it again, it looks nice and normal. This way it's easier to see though. So now let's try to do the actual syntax. First we'll do it wrong. Nope, that's wrong. But now we'll do 555, 555, 5555, submit it, and it works successfully. So now we've successfully added a pattern to our input type. Now, some people feel this isn't the job of HTML, it muddies it up, but I don't think there's anything wrong with attaching a specific format. I think in some ways it actually helps to describe what this input type is. It is a telephone input that accepts this pattern. Now, that's going to finish it up for this lesson, but if you'd like to stick around for the bonus round where we compensate for all of these as well, let's get into it. Let's take care of these one by one. The first step is we're going to take a look at this second option on line 11, and that's where the user leaves off the dashes. And we can make that optional by doing a question mark after each dash. And what that means is look for a dash, but it's not required, so look for 0 or 1 of the preceding character. That's what a question mark means. And then we're going to do the exact same thing to the second dash. Now if I return, I can do the second version, 555, 555, 5555. Submit, and it works successfully. Note though, if I add an extra digit, that's no longer a valid phone number, and we get an error. Very cool. Next, let's take a look at this option, and this is where we have 1 prefixed. So we can do that at the very beginning, and we could say another digit followed by a dash. However, I want to make sure that this whole sequence is optional. So what I'll do here is I'm going to wrap it within parentheses, and then I'm going to place a question mark after that. And that's another way for me to say everything that's in parentheses before this question mark, look for 1, or it's optional. You don't have to find it. And then the final step is, you don't have to do this, but it's helpful for performance and future use. If I do question mark colon within here, this is saying that I don't want to capture everything. Generally, you use parentheses because later you want to capture that specific value that occurred between those parentheses. However, in this case, the only reason I'm wrapping it is so I can make it optional. So I'm going to specify that it's non-capturing. Don't worry about that though if that's getting a little too complicated. And now we'll do 1 dash 555 555 5555 submit. And that worked correctly. And then we want to do one more thing where we make the dash optional as well, and that way we can accept this syntax or this syntax. And then the final thing is sometimes users can wrap their area code, that's what we call this in the US, is sometimes users will wrap their area code within parentheses. So we can do that as well by going right here. This is where we're specifying those first 3 digits. So I'm going to wrap that within parentheses right there. However, for regular expressions, as I noted before, parentheses are used to group things together. So if we want to say, no, I'm literally referring to a parentheses, I'm going to escape it. And that way, it's not the regular expression symbol, but it's a literal parentheses. And then I'll do the same thing here. Lastly, I'm going to make sure that each parentheses is optional as well. All right, and that should take care of all of these. So let's do our final test, and we'll do the base one, 555, 555, 5555. Submit, that worked. Next, let's remove the dashes. That worked. Next, let's add a 1 dash before it. That worked. But let's do something wrong. We'll add 2 before it. Good. That's failing. That's what we wanted to do. And then finally, we're going to wrap the area code within parentheses. Submit. And that works as well. All right, so we built a fairly solid regular expression for matching a USA-based phone number.